Tonight, once again, we are here to practice meditation. In the practice of a meditation, we have to be very careful of a few things, particularly the precepts. We have to make sure that we have fully understood and practicing precepts properly. When we are practicing precepts properly, it brings freedom from all these disturbances. And it also helps to achieve a progress in our practice. And with that purification, we have to employ the Buddha Dhamma Sangha as a protection. So we offer ourselves to them as a refuge. With the intention to practice meditation as much as we can during this time. And after that, practicing meditation. So it gives us a security and conformity and brings confidence within us so that there will be less distraction and less trouble while we are practicing or while we are in the state of doing it. And in the practice of a meditation, as we know that the first practice is to calm the mind down, basically by suppressing all the hindrances, by paying attention to one particular object, being with that object, familiarizing with it. Some of you may have experienced sometimes that as you're practicing meditation, feeling of emptiness, feeling of so much light, feeling of so nothingness, so on. This is the state of the mind when our mind is fully concentrated on the object, absorbed in it, seeing that the object is nothing and this nothing or space is merged into that object. Mind is fully alert and having a one object. Or another time you maybe realize that what I know is so limitless, infinity, so many things. So it's so infinite consciousness around. And that's again our perception. So this perception itself, we cannot claim that the perception exists or non-existent. If we say exist, then that's conditioned aroused. If we say it doesn't exist, then again there is. So such a forms we can experience. Sometimes you may have a question of who am I? What am I doing? What's going on? But in this case, just need mindfulness, being mindfully aware of those states, so known as noting mind. So, as we are practicing meditation, after adopting one object of a concentration, making sure that we are noting it attentively and precisely. Sometimes we become a very attentive, but we cannot locate or we cannot be precise on the object that arises. With a continued practice, we can develop that. Now, it is also not just a superficial awareness of it. And this superficial knowing, again, when objects arises, at that moment we're superficially knowing it and then bringing our perception, forming into different other perceptions and stories. So practice will help us to recognize that, and rather than just superficially knowing it, and knowing it in the present moment, what's happening in its full extent and completely. So living in the present moment here, basically being with the object and knowing what are the phenomena are taking place. And whatever phenomena is there, just being aware. A fundamental of the practice is to be able to be with the object that we have adopted and mentally making a conscious decision of it each time when that arises. And that again doing with non judgmental, no liking and disliking, simply purely doing it. So, practice of a meditation is not just calming the mind, but enhancing it from that calmness to understand the true nature of the reality, and not only channeling out there, we need to channel it back to within ourselves and understanding. So, with this in mind, continue practicing until you hear the gong. Okay. So make yourself comfortable, and anything you want to share, or any questions?
I would like to ask something that
Mm.
when we are focusing on the breath as a primary object, and the breath comes really shallow, so you stop feeling it, but you are still observing
Mm-hmm.
it. And then the mind switch to other object, like the beating heart.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So because it happened to me, not during all the meditation, obviously, but at a certain point, I stopped feeling the breath, but the mind was still observing it.
Mm.
And it was observing it that it was shallow, so the kind of no breath. And then it switched to the beating heart.
Mm.
And then at some point, then you become aware of it, and the breath comes stronger, so the mind switch again.
Mm. That's okay.
So can we have the beating heart as object as well?
No, that can. It's just like uh, another object that came while you're feeling of when you're concentrating on the breath, and it's become shallow.
Mm-hmm.
And this just knowing that when your breath becomes very shallow, and then that moment, rather than searching for the breath,
Mm-hmm.
by just knowing that okay, now I can feel this shallow breath, and it's become so shallow that it's very difficult. So
Mm-hmm.
here, mindfulness of being aware.
Mm-hmm.
So being aware, the mind that is aware of that state. So is simply reversing to look at that rather than trying to find or trying to locate where it is.
Mm-hmm.
So that is. But in case you have noticed that a breath, notice that the heartbeat,
Mm-hmm.
then again that's fine, and just observing it for some times, and then just come back again. It's fine too.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's on that. But do not be thinking that heartbeat is another object.
Okay.
As this will be just a secondary object.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are practicing in this, as we develop, what happens is that in a body contemplation moment, when we observing this body parts, so the body parts, practicing a body parts, then this heart becomes a one section as well. So we will be able to uh, be mindful of that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. And then when we observing this body parts, that helps us to understand the nature of a decay, and how this is connected, and how this is interlinks, and how it changes. Okay? So that also be able to so-called discerning. So at in the beginning of a practice, when your mind becomes concentrated and you feel shallow, then just know that this is a shallow.
Mm-hmm. But the mind is still observing it, even if there is no breath. There is breath, but you don't feel it. But the
Yeah.
mind keeps so.
So in that moment, your mind is basically kind of a thinking state that what should I do now?
Yes, it's like it's
Yeah,
not you are. I'm not fully focused anymore.
yeah,
Even if
yeah,
even if the mind is quiet and the breath is shallow, is not. I'm not focused anymore.
yeah. So
You know
it's
what I
like a
mean?
no breath. Yeah, observing this no breath, kind of a
Mm,
no breath, observing the sense of your awareness.
mm.
So observing your awareness.
See, and the awareness, like you're talking about at the start of the meditation, it's like it's like it's almost like it's hard to explain. It's like we're not uh, you're. It's like we're the awareness, and like your mind, like a thought comes up, like, oh, I forgot to do this today, or I worry, or
Mm.
I need to do this later, or things that might rise up,
Mm.
and you just let them
Mm.
go.
Mm.
Or even like you see a sensation in your
Mm.
body. It's like you're the awareness watching all these things.
Yeah.
Like when you're quiet, and then you forget you're that, and then you get caught up in like daily life if you go about your day, you know.
Mm.
But then you go back to that when you're in your meditation, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
This awareness itself, it's interesting one because when we are meditating and as our meditation develops and become concentrated, as Karina said, it becomes so shallow and then sometimes it just disappears. And those moments, but our awareness is still there.
Mhm.
Yeah? So we simply, it's called, it is this little bit difficult to explain it. It's like you're like reversing, like a flipping your eye and looking in behind it.
Inside out.
Yeah.
It's like if it's you're the awareness
Yes.
looking,
Yeah.
like the universe looking back at itself.
Yes.
Like
Like
a
that.
loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that. Uh, in general, when we are practicing, it involves three things: object, eh, the consciousness, and the means.
Mm.
It's called passa, or the contact. And in that, these three things, when it comes together, that moment awareness comes in a gross level. Right? And then when this in the beginning of the practice, the object disappears. Right?
The breath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Object disappears, so there is no contact. There is only this vijnana or the consciousness who was watching these.
Mm.
There that arises. That's still there, and with this awareness is still working. This awareness is there. So this is the state called the mental state or a nama. Is there, and then now it's all in these two things. There is a knower, and then the sati or the awareness. See, knower, and there is a sati, and then eventually there will be only sati. See, so that's knower is flipping back to see the sati.
But the flipping back is like what I understand for flipping back is like I am looking inside myself. It's like the outside disappears,
Mm.
and I am looking inside myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, here flipping back is not about looking anything, but it's simply that's if you have remember me sometimes was saying perceiving. I
Mm-hmm.
am perceiving it. So it's just simply coming back to see ourselves.
Mm.
It's like rather than looking at the picture that you see on a mirror, you're looking at your own or feeling your own body standing in front of the mirror.
Mhm.
Like
Okay.
that. Yeah? So it's not looking through the mirror, but you're observing the reality of your existence there,
Mhm.
that moment. Like that. So, in the meantime, our consciousness, which always has this awareness called the sati, is always there, always replacing it by new things. Always new things replacing. And now we have to recognize that replacement of new things. So, like here, because of nothing here, I can put this here. Now, in the same place, I cannot put anything else. So it has to go away. Huh? And only then I can put it here, something. Right? And now, this being a cause, when it goes away, to put something else. Like that. And then new things coming in, new thing coming in is simply the result of the old one disappear. So these two things exist in a sense. The process is going there, but in the meantime, two things conditioning one another to exist. But these two things at the same time cannot exist. Alright? So replacing all the time. Now here, in the practice of a meditation, what happens is that when we are paying attention to the primary object, okay, the primary object, so that moment we become so subtle, our mind becomes so subtle that it is also always arises and vanishing, arising and vanishing taking place. And now the more the mind becomes sharp and sharp, what happens is that we can see this flipping moment, the changing moment, replacing moment. So one is fading. Before it fades completely, new things emerged. You can see like a blur image, and that simply started to arise, merging it. And then as soon as the first understanding or first the vijnana drops completely, the second one, which one is replacing there, that becomes completely visible, like that. So that's same with our mind process. When it is taking place, our mind becomes constantly arising and vanishing, and because of this sati becomes so strong, we able to see that how one is replacing to another. Okay? So that's why the quality of a sati is so different from each different phases. So sati, basic sati, and then go up into the enlightenment sati. Yeah, so that's why I always need to recognizing, and sometimes you note it to make a mental note of this and that. Other time we do not know what to call it. I simply perceive. I perceive this. So when we say I perceive this, we are not trying to find any other object, but we are aware of our own perception of that.
Okay.
Now, there is a one, now you may know, jhanas. Yeah? It's called Neva Sanya Nasanya Yatana Jhana. Okay? And that is a formless state. A formless state of the last one. And that state, what happens is that I think this exists, but I don't think that doesn't.
It's confusing.
So it's like some people ask you, is there a self? Yeah? And if I say there is, but in ultimate sense, there isn't. Now, if I say there isn't, but there is, I am exists,
Mhm.
I am there,
Yeah.
like that. So that is the state. Right? You can see that. So that's why the mind also is like that. And this we can see it when the condition, understanding the conditionality. Right?
Like a paradox. It's like
Yeah.
you can't say there is no complete. It's not like if you say like if the Buddha says one thing or the other, then everyone just grasps onto the concept and
Yeah.
can't see the. Yeah.
So I like that.
So if we have these moments that we can perceive these, it means that we are aware at some point.
Yeah, we are aware of our knowledge.
Yes, we are aware of it. So why we cannot do that all the time?
If you can, brilliant.
No, but why? No, I cannot. Why? If we actually perceive these, and it comes at some point, why we cannot be like that all the time?
Yeah, if we can, it would be brilliant. That's why we are practicing. And as we develop, that's why gradually, eventually we become aware of that much of the time. Much of the time. And that's a state called upekha, paripunnang sati. So the mind is fully aware, perceiving the state of what you are, but you have equanimity. So the mind is equilibrium that moment, untouched by anything, but you're simply aware, perceiving, this is. So knowing the condition of everything, okay, this is. And that state of the mind is arhat. Okay? So only then, well, actually, that is the state that we are trying to attain. Trying to attain. So it will come. Gradually, it will come.
There's a good book. It's like what we're talking about. It's by Ajahn Sumito that was with Ajahn Chah, and it's called Intuitive Awareness.
Mhm.
And it just talks about like that awareness. It's really he
Mhm.
calls it. He uses a phrase. I don't know if it's in the canon, but it's sati sampajana. It's like he used that two words. It's like that awareness that's not self or something.
Yeah.
And that to trust in the awareness. And like if you try and do it yourself, you can't do it yourself. Like if you trust in the awareness and watch the things happening, then he's saying that's how he does it. You know?
Yeah.
I need to do this or I need to get better. Saying you always fail, but if you can go into the awareness and do things like that.
Sati Sampajanya, 2 words, yeah. Sati isn't the completeness. Sampajanya is the wisdom part that comes to cut, to see, to understand the reality pertaining to itself. So when we talk about the Sati Sampajanya, it reminds me like the teachings of the Buddha that is compiled. It's known as there are 84,000, right? 84,000 of categories. Okay, and all those 84 Dhammas, 84,000 Dhammas categorized, summarized into Eightfold Noble Path. Right? Eightfold Noble Path. So that starts from having a right understanding. Okay? And this having a right understanding, what happens is that our thought becomes right. When we know correctly, our thought becomes correct. And when we are thinking rightly, then whatever we speak becomes right too. Okay? And then our action becomes right, the way we are living becomes right, and then effort that we apply has become right too. So the concentration and the mindfulness becomes right. So that's how the entire teachings comes to the end here. And this Eightfold Noble Path, again, to realize it, it is just a path, but we have to walk on it. We have to work on that. Only then we realize it. And walking on that path, we require the sati and sampajanya, constant aware of that I am walking on this path. I am walking on this path, I'm practicing with it. The meanwhile, we are not holding that path. It's like a Buddha used the simile of the raft. You use a raft, once you have done, you have to leave it. And that sampajanya helps to do it. If only awareness, you will be thinking, oh, this is beautiful raft. So you will be on the raft, unable to let it be, and move on. Right? So the sampajanya simply cuts. So that's why mindfulness or the awareness is the quality that happens in three different time zones. That is, we are aware of the past, what we have done. We are aware of now, what we are doing. And also we are aware of future, what we are going to do. So that is the quality of the sati. So, like you know where you came from, and then you know where you're going to be. You probably have already planned where you're going to, how you're going to. So that's the future. And you're also aware that you are here. So there's three dimension of awareness. Whereas sampajanya, or the so-called a clear comprehension, ability to comprehend entirely what's happening in the moment here and now, happens only here and now. And here, when we talk about here and now, that's why one thing at a time. Every time it's moving, changing. Every time it's changing. And as a sampajanya comes there to accept, let it go. Accept, let it go. Accept, let it go. I call it like a diamond sword that can cut through everything. And sometimes I was thinking that is probably the reason it's called a Vajrayana, that this diamond way. So you're practicing and you can cut it straight away and enlightened. That's called diamond way. Uh, so like that. And that again, the entire teachings of the Buddha summarized there, having sati and sampajanya. So that's why when the Buddha, after 45 years of a teaching, when he was entering to the so-called Mahaparinibbana, destruction of this five aggregate, his last verse was Appama Kayavaya Dhamma Sankhara Appamadena Sampadetha. So that means all the conditioned dhammas are subject to decay and disappear. Practice diligently, heedlessly. So basically that means having a mindfulness all the time. That is the end. So Buddha's teachings begins from sati and ends at the sati. He was enlightened because of having awareness and become a Buddha, okay, and then end with the word sati. Be mindful. Okay? And throughout this time and all the teachings of the Buddha, when we look at it and we realize that it is not talking about the world. It is not talking about how the world works, how this universe created, how the universe is formed. Buddha wasn't talking about it. So Buddha was talking about ourself, our life, how to be happy. Simple. How to be free. That's all. He's talking about ourselves. The entire teachings is talking about it. But along the way, we had to just to connect with the different stories. So that's how connecting to the world, talking about the world system, like that. But eventually, the ultimate goal is how to be happy, how to get rid of suffering. That's all. When there is no suffering, obviously that is a happiness. And there are lists of dhammas on happiness. So many lists, starting from happiness of having things to enjoy, material things. And that's a very, very gross level that normally people looking for. Yeah? We are looking for material gain, and then having things that we wished for, and then when we receive it, then we are happy. So that's called a bhoga sampatti, having that. And there will be stages, so many layers. People will be happy with jhanas, happy with the ability to attain meditation, happy with after meditation feel relaxed, mind feels so joy, like that. It goes on up to the end. The happiness, the ultimate happiness is the nibbana, like that. But these all happiness is talking about ourselves. It's not talking anything else. So The entire teachings is about our happiness. Yeah. So in that sense, we can see that the teachings of the Buddha, Four Noble Truths, Buddha is saying that everything is suffering. And that again, sometimes people say, oh, Buddhism is nihilistic. Because always talking about dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. Why always talking about negative? I don't want to hear negative anymore. I am going through these troubles already. Yeah. So I like that. But the Buddha didn't stop just by pointing, you got this problem. And Buddha said, this problem caused from there. Now get rid of that problem, then you will be okay. So Buddha is giving these solutions and saying how to get rid of. Follow the Eightfold Path, and then you will be there. So he was offering remedies. He didn't stop just saying, oh, you are trouble. That's it. And then that becomes nihilism. But he was offering a solution. So that's why it is known as the path. Sometimes people say Buddhism is a way of life. Yes, in that sense, it is a way of life. But as human beings, we have a so-called a spiritual side as well, which is always hunger to get the security, feeling comfort in our heart. And that is the main root of development of religion and faith, simply to give a psychological comfort.
So that is not material.
That's not a material.
Because if you have happiness, if you find happiness with this kind of development, with the spiritual development, something that you don't see, that is not. What I mean is like, if we don't find happiness with material things, but find happiness with this kind of things, it's not something wrong with us.
No, no wrong.
It's just
Nothing wrong. No. That's why I said there are so many layers of happiness, different levels of happiness, and one of them is that. By taking a refuge on something that makes you feel comfortable and you feel happy.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with it. But that's not the ultimate goal. That's all. That's not the ultimate happiness. Children get toys to play. That's happiness of having materials to play. Nothing wrong with that. And similarly, spiritual comfort that we receive by following certain religious beliefs, faith, and having faith on something, nothing wrong with it. But that's not the ultimate. That's all the difference. So human beings, because of having the psychological side, we always feel insecure. That's why we have a question of what I will be after I die. Where I will be. So wants to have this security to feel I'm okay.
Well, if we don't care, like, because, for example, I cannot imagine that where I'm going to be when I don't imagine that, so I don't care because I'm not going to be here anymore. Like, does that make sense?
Yes, there will be a person like you, from like millions, and then one person will be thinking it's okay.
But it's correct thinking like that. No, we don't know. Like, why do we have to get worried with that?
We don't have to worry about it. Yeah, that's true. We don't need to worry. But however, the common beliefs or common understanding that people have a fear,
Ah,
uh, a fear of what will I be, and that is basically trying to find the spiritual, the psychological comfort. Uh, and when they find out that having gone through this faith or having gone through these religious practices, then it gives me a satisfaction and it gives me a hope, then it's okay. So that person will be following it. Doesn't matter, how good you are a scientist.
mhm,
We're still trying to find the solution for the spiritual happiness, the psychological happiness, comfortness. And as a result of that, a great scientist turned to a great religious rituals, turning into rituals, finding that after doing this, I will be okay. So that's how they are performing those rituals, simply to find the psychological happiness.
mm,
Huh? But that is temporarily. It doesn't last long. Huh? It doesn't last. Now, the Buddha was offering very different. Buddha was offering that if you know the whole scenario, what you will be in an ultimate sense, because of your knowledge, you are creating the great security and comfort for yourself by knowing, not by not knowing and taking a refuge on something,
mhm,
but you are not taking to any other source but the knowledge and understanding. And with that, you feel safe and secure. It's like having a CCTV in your house. Uh, because you know what's going to happen, and you have full confidence that the CCTV is working there, so I don't need to worry. Like that. So you see everything what's happening, and end of the day, what is going to be. And so you don't have to rely on anybody, anything. And with that, that gives the great comfort, psychological comfort in you. In that moment, you don't have to have any religion or any faith, as you have known everything. But we are having these refuges simply because we do not know.
mm,
So we need somewhere to hold our hand so that we can walk safely. We will not fall down. So that's the psychological. So that's the entire Buddha's teachings is enlightening us to see things so that we don't have to worry what is going to be, what's going to happen. Hmm. And as a result, people ask, what will happen after you die? That question is irrelevant. Uh, we will simply ask because we want to know our spiritual and psychological comfort after I die. But if you have known it, it's not the question to ask. And then sometimes people say, well, I don't believe you. And here we cannot prove.
mhm.
In order to prove it, you have to die. And if you can't die, then how can you prove? And all the proof that I know, you're not believing it. Yeah? So it's a stage we are debating between on the stage of a faith. Yeah? A person say I don't believe, and another person say, I believe. So the person who says believe because I have read the stories, I have faced the stories like that. And then another person, no, I don't believe because I do not see. Like that. So both arguing on the face of the faith. Now, who's going to go to test?
Mhm.
So you have to either die and test yourself or believe what is in there. And then further on, if you really want to test it, then meditate.
Mhm.
The more meditate, you will able to see and see for yourself. And that's a see for yourself here. We be able to see how emotion forms, how our mind creates, how our mind generates more things, and we become aware of that. And with that, we able to see things conditioning, and then the changing happening. And then we realize that if there is no life, so if there was no life, there will be not me. And because of me, there will be many my lives in the future. So understanding of that, because this are cause and effects, help us to find the right path to finish it. And that is the teaching. So that's why even in the time of the Buddha, when the Buddha became enlightened, I think I have told these stories as well. The night when he became enlightened, the first knowledge that he acquired was the previous lives, his own previous lives. So, and that's not just the last life or one or two lives, thousands of lives he remembered. And in those lives, he could remember names, the status, and what he did. There's so many other lists of it. And then after dying from that place, he reborn in new place. So it's just like a reversing and knowing. So he died from this family, he reborn in this family. And when he reborn in this new family, how he is, because whatever he had done in a previous, so he was able to see the transformation, the process. And then with that, now in this life he is this status, and he is doing these things, and after he died he received these things. And that's how he realized the cause and effects in his own previous lives. So he was able to comprehend tiny bit of it in a very small particles of the actions that he performed from thousands of lives that he reborn. And on the basis of that, he concludes in a very short form, desire is the root cause that making us to reborn in different place. So that's a desire is the summary of kind of accumulating the data from millions of births, accumulating that data, and then at the end he realized this is the summary, this is the root cause. And then that's how he understood the second knowledge, that because of the desire is there, we are reborning. So all these sentient beings are being born or will be being born because of the desire. And that's how the second knowledge he acquired, attained. Okay, and with that attainment, so he realized now This desire is the cause, so we have to end this desire. So that ending of a desire was the third knowledge he attained. Okay? And after attaining this third knowledge, Four Noble Truths he invented as a formula to see the entire process. And from that formula, he came up entire teaching, that's 84,000 Dhamma expanded. So it's like a pyramid. Rather than this way, it's
The
from
opposite.
this way coming to the top and then spreading it. So that's why this concept of a life after death, if there is no life after death, then no one can become an arhat. No one can be liberated. But because of this process is there, we can liberate. Because of that process, we can learn and free. And that is called a real security. And the psychological comfort is there. So that's why Buddhism is basically a training. We simply students, students working towards to be the Buddha, like that. And that all comes from sati and ends with the sati. Understanding little particles, things. And it can be experienced even our time, although we are not dedicating completely and we do not know how much perfections we have accumulated. And yet, if we are diligently practicing, we can experience some extent. Like this tester. Tester, we can test it. Oh, this is. And that's how we gradually develop faith in it. That this works. And that's how we develop confidence in it. Okay.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, so any questions from online audience? No, okay. Right, if nothing, then let's practice loving kindness meditation to finish. So bring your attention to the moment, here and now. Reflect for a few moments on today's discussion. Now we'll practice the loving kindness meditation. So bring your attention to the bodily sensations. Whatever sensations is there in your body, be mindful of it. And bring that attention to your hands. Feel the sensations in your hand. Feel the beating heart. And as you feel the beating heart generating loving kindness and compassion to yourself, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be at peace, may I be free from suffering. So radiating these positive vibes to yourself and sharing loving kindness and compassion to yourself. Similarly, sharing loving kindness and compassion to all other sentient beings or any particular person that you wish to share, bringing into your mind and sharing it. May you be well, may you be happy, may you be at peace, and so on. extending loving kindness and compassion to all other sentient beings, whatever beings there are. May they be well, may they be happy, may they be at peace. And bring your awareness to your body sensation and to your eyes as you hear the gong slowly coming out from meditation. Let's pay respect. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivate Sawakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namassami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namam. Okay. Satu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers.